Welcome back, everybody. As you probably guessed by the title and the thumbnail, today we are going old school on you. We are going over this rifle that we have right here. This is my Colt AR-15 Match H-Bar. There are a lot of guns that are very, very similar to this one. This one, according to my research anyway, was made in 1990 and is a 6601 variant for those of you guys who are Colt junkies out there. But really, we're kind of just going to talk about the details of it, what makes it that particular model number, how it performs, and sort of just the history of it overall, if you will. And basically, I believe it was 1984, the United States Marine Corps adopted the A2 rifle, and the A2 civilian variants or sporter variants started to be released to the public from Colt in around 1986. There were very few that were clone correct, if you will, that got out into the wild because Colt, for whatever reason, doesn't like selling their military grade rifles to civilians. Now that's evolved somewhat over the years, but that's been their policy for a long time. And in many ways, it kind of still is with certain exceptions. But what we're gonna do is sort of walk through this rifle, sort of piece by piece, right after we head out to the range and check out and see what kind of groups we can get with it. But before we head out to the range, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is Gunspot. For folks that don't know, it is an online auction site. If you've never been there, it's very easy to head over there, sign up, create an account, and you can start bidding, selling on basically any of the things that you see here on this channel. If you like these kinds of things that we talk about here, they're over there at Gunspot as well. With that, let's head out to the range. Now we're going to see what kind of accuracy we can expect out of this rifle. We have a few different loads, and we have the target set downrange at 100 yards on the carry handle mount, old school. We have our Trijicon TA-01, so 4-power ACOG. With that, I should preface that whenever I'm doing any sort of accuracy testing, I like to have at least 6x magnification if we're shooting at 100 yards. I think that's kind of what it takes to eliminate the shooter variable and what you actually can see. But regardless, kind of hard to do with this particular setup. So we're going to go with what we got. And everything else in the gun is factory, just that scope is added. And in the gun right now, we have some 45 grain 223 Remington hull points. So it's going to be a light for caliber. Of course, we have a 1-in-7 twist barrel, and we'll see how she likes it. Of course, the sun comes out right when I put my hoodie back on. All right, next up we have some IMI. This is M193, so 55 grain stuff. Again, nothing match. Just kind of see how it likes what probably most of you guys are shooting. It's a 55 grain ball. We've had some pretty gusty winds here today. It's slowed down for now, knock on wood, but it's coming straight from the back, so it's not really a crosswind anyway. Next up, we have some Barnes with their Vortex. It's a 5.56 chambering. It's a 62 grain TSX boat tail bullet, and we'll see how she likes it. All right, last load up is going to be the Winchester 223 Remington chambering 69 grain Sierra Match King bullet. I've said it a million times in this channel. I think this particular bullet, the Sierra Match King 69 grainer, is the most consistently accurate across platforms, but you never know. Every barrel's its own animal. So we'll see how this barrel likes it. Let's go check them out. When I just went to shut off my target cam, I got an error message. So I'm not sure if you guys actually got the footage of the target while it was being shot. Regardless, this is what we have here. So up here, that was our 42 grainer that we started with. The wind is kicking up, like I was saying. And that group, excuse me, center to center, we're right at 1.5 inches on that one. Yep, 1.5 inches. Then we came over here with the M193. Looks about the same. 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches. Yep, 1.5 inches both way with the M193, which is perfectly acceptable in my opinion. Then we came over here with that 62 grainer, and it didn't like that bullet. You never know. Every barrel's its own animal. So right there, we're at 2 inches and 7/8, so just under 3 inches. And then we had the star of the show, the Winchester, which again, that's really that Sierra Match King bullet that I was talking about earlier. The stuff just shoots, guys. It is what it is. Center to center, we're right at, double check. Yeah, we're right at 5/8 of an inch. Hard to beat that in terms of a bench rest load with this guy behind the trigger and a 4X scope. I'll take it all day, twice on Sunday. The accuracy that you guys just saw out of that ACOG combo with this rifle is pretty impressive when you think about it for a few reasons. Number one, this barrel is over 30 years old, doesn't have wasn't made rather with modern air gauging, modern stress relieving, all of the different things that we do to barrels today that make you kind of used to that level of accuracy. Additionally, it's not free floated at all, and yet we're getting sub MOA accuracy with match grade ammo and a 4-power scope. So again, I am not mad about that accuracy in one bit. So out here at the end, we do have our A2 flash hider, and what makes it different, of course, than the A1 is that it doesn't have any slots there on the bottom, which acts as sort of a hybrid compensator as well as flash hider. I've said it many, many times here on the channel that the A2 is one of the best all-around muzzle devices on the planet, period, and the fact that you can get them for like $10 is pretty darn impressive. Moving on back, you'll see that they weren't using crush washers back then, they were using peel washers. So that's interesting from a modern perspective. You guys can see the markings there on the barrel. It's marked C for Colt MP, which is magnetic particle inspected, 5.56 NATO, 1 in 7 twist, H-bar standing for heavy barrel. And then additionally, what's interesting about the barrel markings being 5.56 is here on the receiver, it's marked caliber 223. Now, like I said, there's a lot of different variants that are going to have similar mismatches and things like that. But one of the things that makes this somewhat distinct is that this gun, again, made 1990, so it's pre-assault weapons ban. Yet, for whatever reason, Colt decided that civilians don't need to have bayonet lugs. No bayonet lugs for you civilians. Absolutely unacceptable. Now, some of these, which have the law enforcement markings on the side of the receiver that we have here, additionally did have the bayonet on there if it had these markings. There's not a lot of them that I've seen anyway, from my research, that don't have a bayonet lug, but yet have the law enforcement restricted markings. And I don't know why that is. I can only speculate. Regardless, moving on back, of course, we do have a pinned front sight block, and it does not have an F-marked front sight block. And for those that don't know, the reason the F-marked front sight block was adopted is when they switched over to having the 1913 or flat top style upper receivers, they needed to change the height of the front sight to align with what a flip-up sight would be that was mounted onto those, because it was a different height than what you'd have here with this A2 upper receiver. Continuing on back to our handguards, you guys can see that they do have the ribbing on there. They do have the heat shields when you take them off as well. And underneath there, you'll see that it does have a very heavy profile, about to here-ish, and then it tapers down to the 0.75 that it stays to right here out into the end. Continuing on back to the receiver set here, we've already mentioned that we did have the A2 style upper receiver with the A2 style rear sight drum. This is a vast improvement over the A1. While the A1 is very good, the ability to dial in elevation that these offer is fantastic. Of course, we have the small aperture as well as the wider aperture. If you guys ever want to see a video on how to dial or zero your M16A2 rear sight, let me know. I can definitely knock one out for you. It's interesting how it works, and it does work quite well. But we also see that we do have our shell deflector there. We have our forward assist, and then of note, compared to other variants that are out there on the market, this one here has a full fence. So for folks who don't know, full fencing is just the reinforcement that you see right here around the magazine release button, as well as this portion here at the top of the upper receiver. Now, it does have what appears to be a standard pin in the front, but it is not. They're lying to you. It has a stupid screwdriver, because according to Colt, you just can't have the ability to quickly take apart your upper and lower receiver like the military versions have. For whatever reason, that would just be bad. So there's that. Our lower also has a very mild flare to it. As I've said before in the past, if you have a forged lower like this one, there's no reason not to flare that magazine well out. It strengthens it, and it just makes reloads quicker. That said, back in the 80s, when this was becoming in vogue, no one was really thinking about quick magazine changes. We also have our A2 pistol grip, which would be correct for the military versions as well as the civilian versions. It's pretty similar to the A1, with the exception, of course, of that finger portion there that sticks out. And then we do have our standard trigger guard. You can actually drop this down for gloved usage, whereas today, in modern times, we typically just enlarge the portion, but this does have the ability to drop down, hinge open, and be used in winter with gloves on. Off camera, we did disassemble the rifle with a screwdriver, because you do need one for these rifles. As you can see here, that is your pin that goes across, and then our screw just goes inside of it. Again, it makes no sense. What are you gonna do? Another thing I wanted to point out for guys who are a little bit more new school and haven't seen some of the older stuff out there, is that there are no M4 feed rams on this particular upper receiver. The feed rams are there in the barrel, of course, but not cut into the upper receiver like we would see on AR-15s, modern ones anyway, or anything that has a 16-inch barrel or shorter in the military also has them. For 20-inch barrels, it's genuinely believed that you do not need them. I tend to agree with that. Our charging handle, standard affair, nothing at all of note on that one. And then we have our bolt. So you can see it does have the Colt marking on there with the C. Additionally, the bolt itself is marked MPC, so magnetic particle tested, Colt. We have good staking there on the top of our gas key, as you expect from Colt. Colt, at some point after this, went into a period where they were having a bunch of issues with quality control for bolts. The military reported this. There's been a lot of reporting on it, again, after 1990. But back in the day, these bolt carrier groups were very, very good, and the quality was just off the charts. So this is an example of that. One of the stupid things it has, though, is this cutout here. So some of the bolt carrier groups of the day that didn't want you to be able to trip a full auto sear would just put what's called a semi-auto bolt carrier group on there, which has a little lip back here at the rear. And this one just completely eliminated it. And you can see it's even cut down here, exposing sort of our firing pin, as you typically would see on a bolt carrier group, but it's shaved down a little bit more than even that here on the sides, which is just a little bit weird. But in terms of function, it doesn't matter at all in a semi-auto gun. But one thing I'll tell you, just from shooting it, I shoot a lot of 20-inch ARs. I'm probably one of the few people in 2022 that still does that, but I do. And the recoil impulse is different on this rifle. It's not as smooth, in my opinion, and I think a lot of it has to do with that lightweight bolt carrier group. It just doesn't function as well as a traditional 20-inch barreled AR-15 shoots. If you've never shot a 20-inch AR-15, I recommend trying it in terms of a shooting experience. It's just very, very, very pleasant. Trigger group on this one, semi-automatic, as you can see there, nothing fancy at all. It does have a very, very positive reset. From what I understand, this is called the S trigger from Colt, from my research, and even more so than most mil-spec triggers out there, it's positive. It absolutely kicks that thing forward, and I am not mad about that at all. You can see here it is not milled for a full auto sear. However, some Colts of the era of the exact same time frame will have a sear block, a piece of aluminum that's forged into the lower, preventing you from putting it in there. This one does not have that, so that's interesting. Additionally, we do have our A2 length buttstock. Of course, the rear here opens for storing cleaning kits or whatever else you want to stick in there, but that's pretty much it in terms of the lower receiver. At this point in the video, I think we've touched on most of the important features of the firearm itself. One thing I didn't discuss was reliability, but I've had this rifle here for probably 10 years now, and I've never had a malfunction out of it of any kind at all. It's been 100% reliable, and I've put a good number of rounds through it over the years. But in terms of what I would expect from a 20-inch AR-15, that's exactly it. These guns, particularly the 20-inch variants, are known for being extremely reliable, and this one has been no different. The bad news is there's really nowhere you can pick these up except for the used market, like I mentioned earlier. They're not making them anymore. But of course, you could get yourself a AR-15A4 clone, which of course I've done many reviews on, that are currently in production, and they're going to perform very, very similarly to this. In fact, the Stag Arms makes a H-bar version of their 20-inch that I do have a review on as well, which will replicate this very, very well. Chrome line barrel, all those sorts of things. Same profile barrel. The only difference, of course, is that, well, not the only difference, the biggest difference, of course, is that it's going to have a flat top upper receiver on there. But in terms of shooting, that one's actually a little bit smoother. Like I mentioned, I do think it has something to do with that bolt carrier group being lightened. But with that, I suppose we will close the video out. If you guys are subscribed here and you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week, make sure you hit the notification bell for sure. And then additionally, you can sign up for my email list that you see rolling in here on your screen. That email list has, goes out at most once a month and has all the videos since the previous email went out. So that way there's no big tech censoring your eyes from my content. Additionally, if an AR-15A4 or any kind of accessories like the ACOG that you guys saw earlier go on sale, we will put those in the daily deals email, which you can sign up for at the website here on your screen. It's got 6 or 7 of the best deals that we find around the internet on that day. And if it's in the email on that day, it's the cheapest anywhere on the internet that I've seen and was aware of. So that way it saves you guys some time because you don't have to do the looking. I've done it for you, and hopefully we'll save you some money as well. And that's all I got. Thank you guys for watching. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you like this trip back into time with this rifle, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.